Hey guys, it's Matt Wenning at WenningStrength.com, and today we are going to talk about small muscles that you may be neglecting in your training. Now, I know that a lot of you guys, we always talk about lats and pecs and triceps and quadriceps and all these other things. These are very large muscle groups that tend to over-dominate lots and lots of our movement patterns and our sporting activities. But what you start to find is as you get older and you get stronger and you start pushing the limits of your skeletal muscular system, you start finding that the small groups of muscles are the ones that start limiting you or retiring you from your movement. So let's go into some small muscle groups and let's see if any of these come up and you haven't been training them. Maybe you should start putting some work into these muscle groups to make sure that you can maintain the large compound movements and sporting activities that you like to do.
Lately I've been living like I can't take a loss. They ain't wanna help me, that's what made me a boss. You can't kill my confidence, I think I'm the man. We don't give a f, that's what they don't understand. I'm back again like flu season, I broke records while loose leafing. I'm coming down my roof, leaving, don't give a f, I don't care. Did the by my lonesome, no wonder now I'm on one. No shortcuts on that long run, all I really want is my share.
The first one I think we can't talk enough on, which is very popular and common for people to know, is the rotator cuff. Now the supra and infraspinatus muscle group is a very small, thin, cord-like muscle that causes stability in the humerus joint, attaches it in a rotational fashion to the shoulder. Now we have done videos on Patreon on why you should be limiting your military pressing, log pressing, and things of that nature due to the fact of what it does to the skeletal muscular system. So if you're unfamiliar with that, you definitely need to get on Patreon and check that video out because we put a lot of time and effort into it. But without going too much into that, you need to make sure that at least weekly you're doing something for your rotator cuff. So I posted an exercise of me laying on the ground and basically doing an internal and external rotation with lighter dumbbells. We do some form of rotator cuff movement almost every week, if not every upper body workout. The reason is that nobody thinks about the rotator cuff until it becomes a problem. And when it becomes a problem, it's usually too late. So what you need to do is make sure that not only the rotator cuff is very strong, but it's also very mobile. This becomes a big problem as well when you're a bench presser or something that's a movement of that pattern, because those muscles tend to get a little stiffer and a little tighter and then a little bit more prone to tearing and messing up. Many times what you'll find is guys that stop bench pressing, like Eric Spoto and a handful of others that were world-class bench pressers in their own time, had to retire because their rotator cuffs either failed or completely got destroyed and had to get repaired. I have found that very few people have come back from rotator cuff surgery and ever benched what they could before. I'm not saying that there haven't been people that have done it, but it is rare. So make sure that you do some research on rotator cuffs. We're going to do a video on Patreon on all the exercises that we do for the rotator cuff to help you. The next big or small muscle group that you should have a big emphasis on is abductors and adductors of the hip. So what you'll start to find is that these muscles are super important if you're a sumo deadlifter or an advanced squatter. Why? Well, one, it supports the hip, but two, trust me when I tell you, because I have torn my right adductor. I tore it at Raw Unity after squatting the all-time world record. And what I did was I got to the deadlift. I was dehydrated because I wasn't used to being in Florida because I was in Ohio. It was right at the end of February, the 1st of March, so it was still really cold up here. And I couldn't control my water down in Orlando. And ended up slightly tearing, luckily it repaired itself, but tearing my adductor in my second deadlift, which knocked me out of the all-time world record total at that particular year. The point is that you don't realize how important the abductors and adductors are until one of them is messed up, and you'll find that almost every movement is painful and not usable. This is especially important for track athletes, football, MMA, and anything else. So what I'm starting to get to you guys to understand is that the small muscles tend to be the ones that knock you out of your sport, not the big ones. The next muscle that's super important that a lot of people never really train and they oftentimes neglect is the serratus anterior. The serratus anterior has shoulder stability and posture activity. So tight serratus muscles can cause bad anterior shoulder problems, shoulder pain, and actually increase shoulder wear due to the fact that your shoulder joint is slowly getting pulled this way. Those are usually hand in hand with tight lats. So I find that serratus muscle has worked very, very well with doing pullovers, things of that nature that actually help you not only set the bench, but maintain that overhead mobility. So although I don't feel overhead pressing is very beneficial, I do think that overhead pull downs or pullovers are very beneficial based on the fact that they provide traction due to the fact of the way that the weight is pulling on the joint. It's not pushing down, it's pushing out and forward. So the serratus anterior muscle is one of those other muscles that is very, very important in your training, and you don't realize how important until you start having shoulder problems, etc. The last muscle that I think is very neglected in a lot of people, especially sporting activities, we have seen this muscle cause all kinds of havoc in the military, because what happens? Well, you show up at boot camp and you're asked to run 20 to 50 miles a week. Well, in reality, the tibialis anterior is one of those muscles that is heavily neglected. And think about it, when we go and train legs, a lot of us will train calves, right? But we don't think about the opposite muscle, which is the muscle that actually picks up the toe. So what you start finding are pick up the actual foot. Instead of, the calf muscle pushes the foot down, the tibialis anterior raises it back up. It's a very small, thin muscle, and a lot of people misplace shin splints with tibialis anterior getting pissed off. You'll see this a lot with skiers as well. But the tibialis muscle needs to be strong and fit if you're doing any kind of impactive movements, any kind of rucking, running, or marching, or any kind of skiing, hockey, or anything else. The tibialis muscle really helps to also protect the knee, because when it's weak, that means that the foot is not tracking correctly. And as we know, if the foot placement is not correct and the foot pressure is not correct due to fatigue from the tibialis anterior, you could have either knee, hip, or back issues. So I hope this starts to help you guys understand. One thing also I don't like about elevated heel is that it extends or lengthens the tibialis anterior. Also can cause it to have major issues, because let's face it, in most sports, we don't play it with a heeled shoe. So if you're walking into the gym thinking you're cool wearing these $250 Olympic shoes and you play football or basketball, think about it. You're not in that 2-inch leveled heel when you're out on the court, and now you feel more comfortable with that elevation. Therefore, the tibialis anterior muscle is lengthened and can cause issues down the road with not only posture, but performance as well. What I want you guys to understand is there's so many factors to training. And what I have found is that most people ignore so many of these small muscle groups until it's too late. And they're like, hey, I've been training like a damn idiot, and now I need you to fix me. It's a lot easier to just start off fresh and make sure that you don't have these injuries in these small muscles and that you train correctly, and do some pre-activity to make sure these muscles get hurt instead of post-injury activity trying to heal and get everything better. This is where online coaching and the manuals come in, where we have put a lot of time, effort, education, and dedication into making sure that we are giving you the best possible information that we possibly can. So I hope this opens your eyes to start focusing on small muscle groups, giving them some credit when you're training, and making sure that you understand you're only as good as your weakest link, and oftentimes the weakest link is a small muscle group.
Lately I've been living like I can't take a loss.